The views and opinions expressed on this platform are of me, myself, and I, not any agency I'm affiliated with. So please do not take what I say personally. Coming at you from this lovely evening in St. George, Utah, where it's 41 degrees but feels like 37, and we are all dying on the inside. So today's subject is going to be a little different from what I normally do. I'm doing this episode in perspective of the significant other slash spouse of a first responder, which I think is a really cool twist. Tonight I have with me Heather Campbell. She is not only a baker, not only a craftswoman, engineer. She also works in the education field, and she is the wife of one of the supervisors at my agency. Heather, if you want to introduce yourself, tell the people who you are and what you stand for.
I don't know if I can do it any better than that. Yeah, I'm an educator. I've been in education for like 18 years, which is a really long time. I have 4 kids. I live in St. George, Utah. That's about all.
Very admirable feats in and of themselves. Kids are a lot, but yours are actually like stunning angels. And I'm not brown nosing when I say any of this. I would tell Heather this if she was the wife of one of my supervisors or if she was not. So we're gonna get that out the way from the get go. Tell me how you and your spouse met. How did you and Quinny meet?
Okay, so we were both going to college and we both worked for the university, and he happened to be working for the moving crew. So the moving crew, they set up like gymnastics meets, and anytime there was an event, they were the ones that would come and set everything up for it. And I worked for the bookstore. And so we had an event that we needed set up, and they needed to come and move some bookshelves. So he walked in, picked up this bookshelf, moved it by himself, and I thought, I'm never going to have to move anything for the rest of my life.
What else are men good for?
And from there, I mean, that's where it started, and it didn't stop after that. He's been lifting stuff for me ever since.
Actually, I saw him lift something earlier today, so it's really convenient.
What did he lift?
My spirit. My morale.
I don't know about that one.
Takes a lot more than that. So tell me a little bit about the shift work your spouse has. Because I know, like, we do our 24 hours, and agency I'm at right now, like, our supervisors also do the same hours as we do. So, like, what does it look like in terms for you? Like, do you see him in the morning and then he comes back eventually the next morning? What does that look like for your perspective?
So he does work 24-hour shifts, and it's been something that we for sure have to adjust to because I am in education. I go to work early in the morning, so he'll get off and get home around 7 o'clock, and I'm usually out the door by 7:15. So it really is like just a quick passing. We see each other. Um, and then if it's his in-between day, it's really super chill for him just so that he can get his rest and decompress and everything. Um, and then we do it all over again. So we'll see each other at night and the days he isn't working, but the days he's working, it really is like a hi bye type situation. He has done 12-hour shifts before, which was a lot more difficult. He would work at night so that I could work during the day and he could watch our kids. So I prefer the 24 hours. I actually really enjoy the 24-hour shifts because it seems to work.
Absolutely. And that's what, like, being here at this agency and the agency I came from, people are like, 24 hours, that's so much. It's actually a lot easier than when I did the 412s and you're at work every single day. You go to work, you come home, you eat a quick bite, then you go to sleep so you can go back to work the next day. I love a good 24 over 12, so totally understandable. So in the regard of like the days where it's hi bye, see you later, hopefully whatever, how do y'all make time for one another? Because one of the biggest things of being an EMS is that you keep your core values, and one of those is your family time because it's one of the most important things in your life. So, like, how do y'all make time for one another? What does that look like for y'all?
So I think one of the best things that's ever happened to us is when he was going to paramedic school, they had a meeting with all of the spouses, significant others, and the people who were going to start paramedic school. And they just flat out told them, this is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're not going to see them. You need to be supportive. Like, this really is what you're getting into. And for me, that was the best thing, because I think as a significant other or a spouse, like, people can tell you what it's like for them to work 24-hour shifts, but until you're in it, you really don't understand it. It it's not always the easiest. I think you have to have, I don't know if I'd say a specific personality to be able to handle it, but you have to be okay with being a little bit independent, knowing they're not going to be there all of the time, and understanding what it takes for them to do their job. So for me, I felt like I was prepared going into it. We didn't have kids when he started, so it was an easier transition. It's kind of crazy because we both started our careers at the same exact time. So I started teaching the same year that he started doing EMS. And so it worked for us because we were just doing our own jobs. Then when the kids came into it, it obviously became a little bit trickier. But one of the things that we've done is, I think that as a paramedic and anyone working in like first responders, you'll feel guilty for missing events. Like, you'll feel guilty for missing Christmas and Thanksgiving and birthdays and holidays and whatever it is. So one thing that we have done from day one is, if we know that he has to work on Thanksgiving, we celebrate Thanksgiving on a different day. If he has to work on Christmas, we celebrate Christmas a different day, because I don't want to make him feel bad for missing those events. And it's something that he shouldn't have to miss out on, because paramedics don't stop. Like, people aren't going to stop. It's 24/7. And so we for sure have put an effort into making sure that he's there for the major events. He doesn't miss anything, so that, yeah, I don't want him to ever resent his job and feel like he's missing out on things with our family.
And I think that's such a key thing because, like, again, we don't get to handpick and choose what holidays we work and what holidays we don't want to work. And then we can't just, oh, well, I'm just going to call in sick and it's going to be fine, because then that's somebody else that has to either hold over or somebody else gets called in. And it's unprofessional, and, like, to an extent, it's selfish in a way. It's like we can't just decide, like, well, I'm not going to work on Christmas. You can try to put in your time off, but it doesn't mean you're going to get that time off. So being able to kind of accommodate to, well, you're working Thanksgiving, so we'll do it the day before or the day after. I think that's commendable for the family perspective because, again, like, nobody's mad that you have that job, but at the same time, it's okay, well, we'll just do this and it's fine. So I think that's really commendable for the family aspect. And especially with like the 24-hour shifts, and there can be hours at a time where you don't talk to your spouse, your significant other. What are some of the things that you worry about whenever he's at work or when he's on the truck, whenever he's not near his phone? Like, what does that look like for you?
Oh, I think that's one of the things that was tricky at first. I remember when he very first started, he would do on call. So they would stay at home, they would sleep at home, then their pager would go off, and he would have to be dressed in posting, what is it, back at the station in so many minutes. And I remember how stressful that was, where he would sleep in his clothes, the pager would go off, I would wake up, like, did you hear that? You got to get out, you got to get there. And so that was hard. So one of the things that we do that just makes me a little bit be able to sleep better at night is, I for sure track his phone, because I can hear sirens going off. And there's a call specifically where, and it was only a couple of years ago, where there was a mass casualty in our town, and it was all over the news, and he was working that night. And I knew what was going on based on what the news was saying, but I knew I also couldn't contact him. And so for me to be able to see where he was at that moment helped, because I was like, okay, this is where he's at. I know that he's safe. I know that I'm not going to hear from him in, I don't know how many hours, but for me to know where he was, it helped. And then with that, also, you don't understand that just because the shift ends at 6:30, they're not going to be home at 6:30.
Facts.
It doesn't mean anything. And so sometime, he would come home and it's like, I got to get the kids to school, or we need to get them to the babysitter, or whatever it was. And I know that it would stress him out when I would say, hey, when are you going to be home? Or, hey, where are you? So that's one of the things where I had to learn it. I could just look and see, okay, I see he's not at his station. He's not on his way home. He must be on a call. I need to just leave it be. Because it is, I mean, it's stressful. I think it's stressful for you guys to know my shift should be over. I'm supposed to be somewhere. I can't let my people know that I'm not going to be there for an hour or a half an hour, however long it is. And so that was one of the things that I would worry about, is like, where is he? When is he going to be home? But I know that me worrying about it only made it worse for him, because it stressed him out even more. So being able to know exactly where he's at, and then just knowing it's not a good idea to ask, when are you going to be home?
Not for a second. There are a couple of questions that you shouldn't ask, but one of the questions is, well, when are you going to be home? That's a great question, darling. Let me just reach into the future and find out real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And as far as like kind of what you said about when they come home, it's not just, well, they just come home real quick right away. Sometimes if I had like a bad shift or there's a specific call that like really got to me, it's easier for me to just, well, I'm gonna go home and I'll be fine. Or I'm just gonna go home and like bottle it up, which is the easier route. Or I'm just gonna go home and I don't have to talk to anybody, something like that. Is there a way that you can tell if your spouse is under stress from his shift or from the job in general? Because it's not even just the shift work. Like as a supervisor, there's so many other background key factors that like we in the field are shielded from because of our supervisors and our management and stuff. So like, is it a matter of, like open communication could be hard, or are you able to see like the signs of stress in him, or is there like telltale signs you can kind of follow along as things progress? Like what is that?
It's interesting because tell you the call that he went on that haunts him the most. I can tell you the step that he wished he would have taken. I can tell you the question that he asks himself every day on that call that he thinks didn't go the way that it should. Um, and so for me that's hard, because you have to listen to them and be understanding, and I can't imagine what they're going through. And I understand, like, I'm in education where I I see stuff, I hear stuff, I can't share the stuff, because we do have the FERPA, you guys have HIPAA. Um so it's like you need to be able to go home and vent somehow, or talk about it to your significant other to an extent, but you can't cross the line of the information that you're going to share. And so that's it's one of those things where the communication is everything. Like, if they aren't communicating what they need, I wouldn't ever know. And that's changed over time, and I also think that changes day by day, because I don't think that you can just say, okay, when I come home, this is what I need you to do, or this is how I'm going to act, because depending on the call and the situation that happened, it's going to be different every single day. So for me, I have to be patient, and I have to be flexible, and I have to be understanding that, okay, he's coming home from this job that can go from 0 to 100 in a second. And when he comes home, I also don't know what he's gone through during that time. So I have to be able to let him decompress a little bit. I need to not think that the minute he walks through that door, he's dad now. And he's still my husband, but I can't throw all of that back on him. He has to be able to walk through the door and know that he's coming into his safe place. He can reset, he can decompress, he can do what he needs before he moves on to the next step. And that's also taken a while to understand, because I mean, and this was tricky when we were working, when I was working and he was, staying home during the day, because it's like he'd walk in and I'm like, here's the kids, here's what we need. There wasn't a second for him to go out of paramedic and adjust into being the dad and needing to do that. So I know that it's hard, and I I know that communication's the best thing that we can do, because I mean, we had fights over it because I don't understand. And I didn't understand why when he walked through that door he couldn't be dad and he couldn't start taking care of his family, But I think just understanding that what they go through is a lot, and if I'm not able to see that they need some time and they need some space, it's not going to help either one of us. Although there was a time when he came home, and this was probably in the past couple years. He came home from a shift, and I didn't realize it had been a long shift. I'm literally getting ready to leave the house, and I felt like I needed to inform him that I'd cut my hand and there was some blood in the closet, and that if he ever killed me, the evidence would be in the closet. And he looked at me like, are you kidding me?
Right.
And I was like, I'm just letting you know I gotta go to work. Love you, bye. And walked right out. And it was a rough day. And he was just like, what in the world did I just walk into? So for me, it's like I'm starting my day and I had a good night's sleep. And he's coming off of a 24 hours and maybe didn't sleep at all. And I don't know what had happened. And so they're just coming into a completely different mindset. And then the other thing too is I feel like when you go in to be a paramedic or to be an EMT, you feel like you can fix problems. Like that's why you do it, is you're going in to help people. And so for them to be able to shift the mindset of I need to be able to wait and take care of myself for a minute and not fix all of the problems that are there, because I know that burnout is a problem. And I think that burnout has become worse over the past couple years. But I think allowing them to sit and reset kind of helps that a little bit, because you do need to decompress and you do need to be able to think about what happened during your day. Because I know after rough shifts, all you want to do is come home to your safe place. But the minute you come home to your safe place, you can't be bombarded by everything else that's going on that you might not be able to fix.
Just want to give a moment because that was so much good stuff to sit and soak in. I want to highlight one of the things you had talked about like especially your home being your safe place, but also transitioning that role. Like, I personally don't have any kids, so I can go and sit in my car and for a couple of hours if I wanted to and just sit, decompress like you're talking about. And that's one of the ways I do it. But especially like the first responders who have kids and the first responders who have to go home and like take care of the whole house as single parents, which I mean that's not Quinny's case, but um that's hard. And like you said, realizing like that transition of, well, now he's going from paramedic to he's stepping into his house, stepping back into the role of dad slash husband. I think that's key. I think that is vital. So, wrapping up with our last question, and I'm excited about this one. For our first responders who have a significant other, what is a piece of advice you give to them for their significant other or in general? Because, like you said, and another thing I want to kind of highlight, like you had said, like it's hard to try to understand, like, I don't want to say what we go through, like we're that important or anything like that, but it is hard sometimes to be able to open up to our significant other if you have one. But sometimes it's hard to open up because kind of like you don't even want to think about it. You want to act like it never happened, which is the worst thing you can do. Do not do that. But I don't know, sometimes it's hard to remember that like our spouse may or may not get it and maybe we need to have patience. What is the advice that you would give?
I have lots of advice. I have a lot of, I feel like I've been in this for a long time, like 17 years. Quinn has been doing this for 17 years.
That is an adult lifetime.
That is almost as long as you've been alive, Alexis.
Okay, give me some credit. I'm older than 18. I
Oh,
may
thank goodness you're legal.
I may not look like I'm 18, but I promise I'm well over 18.
No. I mean, he's been doing this for a really long time, and so it hasn't always been rainbows and butterflies. It's been tricky. I remember there were a couple calls shortly after we had our twins, and in a matter of a week, I think that there were 5 pediatric deaths.
Oh dear God.
It was a lot, and all of them happened to be pretty close to the same age as our boys. And our boys are the very first kids we had. And so in a matter of a week, there was a drowning, there was a SIDS, there was a car wreck. Um, a dad had backed over his child, all in the matter of a week. And so I remember waking up one morning and I knew Quinn should have been home. And I found him sitting in between our boys' cribs, just sobbing because it was something that he'd been through. It hit way too close to home. So it's like even though he'd been through that before we had kids, it was like every stage of life and every transition that we make, it's going to bring up something different and it's going to hit them in a different way because of the situation that they're in. And so I think at that moment I realized like I really have no idea what they're going through. And we kind of joke how, and you say it too, like we're not the heroes, but like you guys are the ones that everybody is depending on. And you're the ones that they call you at their very lowest moment and they call you when they need help. So having that pressure of knowing you're going in that call for that person at their lowest moment when their family needs you the most is a lot of pressure. And so to be able to switch out of that and come home and then realize how lucky you are. And I think that's one thing that Quinn's realized too is he makes the most of every single moment. He doesn't take anything for granted. I think you see so much stuff out there that you realize that when you're home, you need to be home and you need to take advantage of every single thing that you have. And so for me as the spouse, I need to understand that I need to give him grace and every day is going to be different and some days he's going to come home and it's going to be completely fine. And there are some days where he's going to come home and it's going to be emotional. And I mean, the past couple years has been tricky because I mean, there have been thoughts of career changes. And for me, I'm like, what do you mean? We're 15 years into this. How are you going to change your career at this point? Um, and I haven't always responded in the best way, and I recognize that. But the more we talk and the more he's able to communicate and let me know what's going on, and the more receptive I am to understanding what he's going through, the burnout is real. It's real. And like I said before, I don't know what it is with the past. I don't know, 5 years. I feel like when he first went in to EMS, they didn't talk about burnout and they didn't talk about mental health and they didn't talk about first responder trauma, but it's there now. And so we have to make sure that we are allowing them to feel that and be supportive. And sometimes you just have to listen. So he'll come home and sometimes I'll say, do you need to talk? Do you just want me to listen? But I can't fix it because I also know that too because I want to help and I want to fix things, but I can't. And so sometimes all they want to do is sit and talk. And a couple of weeks ago, there's a situation that's super fresh and I walked in and I was getting ready to go to school and it's kind of the same thing like he's coming home trying to decompress. I'm ready to go. Like I'm trying to get the kids ready. We're trying to get out of the house on time. And he just sat on the end of the bed and looked at me. And I knew something was wrong. And I just said, do you need a hug? And he said, yes. and I hugged him and he bawled, and it was rough, and he just sat there and cried, but that's all he needed. Like, he just needed to know that there's someone at home who was going to listen to him, who he could talk to, who he could trust, um, who could be his support person with no judgment. And at the time, that's what he needed. And then later we were able to talk about it. But at the time, all he needed was someone to literally hold him and tell him everything was going to be okay. Um, so, long story short, my piece of advice would be the communication has to be there. And you cannot expect every day to be the same. I cannot expect for him to respond the same way he walks through that door on a Monday that he will on a Wednesday, because I know it depends on the call, and I know it depends on how much sleep he's gotten. And I mean, he is a supervisor, and so their, you know, their shift is a little bit different. I understand what he goes through because my job, um, I mean, we're all kind of protective of our people, and he's protective of the people that he works with. And he feels that he needs to, like you said, he has to shield them from some things that they might not need to hear or they don't need to know about at the time. But he also is extremely protective of the people that he works with, which is, I mean, one of my favorite things about him. But the more I understand about what he's going through and why he's doing what he's doing, the more grace that I can show him. And I hope the safer he feels coming to me and is able to talk to me more. But, like, I will never understand what it's like to be in his shoes. And there have been a couple times where he's had to protect me from some things, because he tells me once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like, it is burned in your brain. And there have been times where I thought I was strong enough to walk into a situation where I could handle it, and he's like, "You can't. We are wired differently." And so I think that's kind of tricky too, because you're not normal necessarily. You have to think different and you have to be able to respond differently. And so, I don't know, I just try to be understanding and give him what he needs so that he doesn't feel guilty, doesn't feel like he is burning out, making sure that his mental health is taken care of while still being the supportive wife who needs him at home and needs him to do stuff and needs him to help with the kids. But, like, he can't do any of that if he isn't taking care of himself first.
Very true. And I mean, as much as we need to lean on our significant other or whoever it is at home waiting on us, it is like that analogy of being on an airplane where before you can fix somebody else's oxygen mask, you need to make sure yours is on. So I'm really glad you said that. And that advice, like, I know it's for the, significant others, first responders, whatever, but it's something that, like, it's refreshing to hear also, knowing that, like, somebody in our support system has our back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as a first responder, if you don't have that, you need to find somebody who can be that for you. And I know I sound like a broken record. I probably say this on every episode, but something I've learned the hard way is if you don't have your support system, you're going to make yourself an island, and nobody can survive as Alcatraz. So I'm going to go say that again in a mirror real quick. But
It's okay to ask for help.
it is. Like that book you gave me. Oh, what did it say? Asking for help is not giving up. It's showing that you're not giving up.
Yeah.
And that hurts. So
It's hard. It's hard. Well, especially when you think you're fixing everybody's problems.
Exactly.
You're helping everybody else. So you should be strong enough where someone doesn't have to help you.
Oof. Okay, why don't you just come at me a little bit more? That hurts.
Looking you straight in the eyes.
No, that's why I keep looking away. So, I mean, I can't top any of that. It's just, that was good stuff. Do you have anything else you want to add, Heather?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I appreciate you guys. I think the other thing that we need to understand is like when you do the shift work and you're working with your partners, like they become family. And so I have become friends with a lot of other spouses and significant others and girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever it is, where Quinn feels like we can go to a Christmas party for your work or whatever it is. And there are other people that I can talk to that understand it. Because if you don't have people that understand it, it's hard to explain. And so, even as a spouse, I feel like we need our support system in the other spouses of really the family that they're with. Like those people who you're on shift with, I mean, you're with them for 24 hours. That's a really long time. And
Yeah.
so, like, you really do become like family and good, bad, or indifferent. You know, sometimes it's the good and the bad, the ugly that you see with the partners. So I have to kind of become part of that because you can't walk away from that. And you can't walk into your house and forget everything that happened. So I think me finding my support system in other spouses or other significant others has helped too because they understand what I'm going through.
See, I've never thought about it like that because everyone always talks about the first responder community and like we always have our, what was it, have each other's six, have each other's back basically. I've never thought about the significant other in of the first responder
Hmm.
having their own community. That's really beautiful. Very good. Um, so if you don't have anything to add, I sure don't have anything to add because it was good stuff. Very good stuff. And with that, so, guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, future topic ideas, please email me at 22 at the lips podcast at gmail.com. Again, that's 22 at the lips podcast at gmail.com. Thanks. Never stop learning and be safe out there, friends. Tonight, I have with me Who is Hannah? Oh no. We can get through this. We're gonna get through this. Because you're a woman of class.
I like my dollar bills
Taped together.
because I don't like odd numbers.
Could you imagine with a money gun and we get stuck halfway through because it's trying to.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, we'd have to make it rain, obviously.